Welcome to Neuropod Podcast. I'm James Watt, and this is episode 3 of our weekly long-form format program where we interview some of the most interesting names in the world of neurodiagnostics. This week, I interview Brett Netherton, a widely recognized expert in the field of neurodiagnostics and medical device development. In this episode, Brett discusses how his hope to become a fighter pilot ultimately helped him find his way into engineering, grow his fascination of the human body, and develop him as a successful entrepreneur. We discuss what it was like to found Rhythmlink and what he learned as he worked to set up a manufacturing facility in Hong Kong. And we talk about how his approach to electrode manufacturing sent shockwaves through the industry. As the past owner of one of the most successful electrode manufacturers in the field, we discuss how he learned to provide quality, availability, and affordability as he unknowingly helped transform the world of disposable device manufacturing. We hope you enjoy the interview. If you like what you hear, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to your audio podcasts. Enjoy the show. Well, Brett Netherton, welcome to Neuropod Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. So I know you. I've known you for years, but not everybody that's listening may know you. So tell the Neuropod community about yourself. Who you are professionally, who you are personally. How you got to where you're at right now.
It's a good question. It's a tough question. So I am an electrical engineer, and I think that I got to where I'm at now because I really like physics and electronics, and I try to look at where those things cross with neurodiagnostics. And for some reason, people enjoy hearing me talk about it. So I have a master's degree in exercise physiology. I did my electrical engineering at Clemson. I did my master's at South Carolina. And I was fortunate enough to find this wonderful field of neuromonitoring in the operating room. And so I guess that I'm considered one of the electronics guys in our field.
You definitely are. You're considered a guru, I think, in the electronics realm. So people love to hear you talk at conferences and kind of expose new ways of thinking about what the equipment does on the inside to give us the data that we record. So
I'm always amazed that people do still want to hear me talk about that. But I'm glad. I enjoy it.
Yeah, I think in our field, I think there is a relative deficit of, information out there about, the electronics and the instrumentation, and people, they want to know how it works. And so somebody like you that can, really break it down, explain it so that it's understandable and not, a bunch of mathematics. I think people really take to that because people are constantly looking for additional knowledge in how to do our field better. So, um, so so during your life, what is the accomplishment that you are the most proud of?
That's such a tough question. I I am not naturally a proud guy of I've accomplished a lot. I generally feel like I have huge amounts that I should have accomplished that I've not accomplished. But I thought about this, and I think it's that I survived entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship can be a beast. It can be hard, but I've actually been able to make my living through entrepreneurship. I I think there's probably a ton of other things that I might be proud of, but from the context of our awesome industry, maybe that's it. I think. I've the whole thing about rugged, and James, I know you and I've talked with you, the concept of rugged individualism. I look at what you've done and you just have to push. And then so many of the people that we know, nobody made them do the things they did. That how
Mm-hmm.
many hours have you put in to make yourself the person you are? And nobody made you do those. You did those on your own. And I think our industry offers so much to people who are willing to put in the time and the effort. It takes a lot of effort. So
Yeah,
I'm proud of. I've survived being an entrepreneur in neurodiagnostic field. That's,
yeah. So talk about the entrepreneurship piece because you've done a lot of different things in our field, mostly on the device or the supply side of things. But talk about what you've done. Talk about
yeah,
how you even came to creating
yeah,
products for
yeah.
neurodiagnostics.
So that's a great question, and um, I I think that I am not I don't consider myself an exceptional business person, but I saw a need, and for those that don't know, I started Rhythmlink in my home and in really it started in June of 2002, July of 2002, and I got uh, uh, my first FDA approval in December the 21st of 2002. Wow.
Nice,
And
long time ago.
yeah, and all the things I could still talk about that needle. ASTM A313 spring steel, ASTM F899 level of vacuum melt purity, and the Kynar PVDF heat shrink and the heat shrink ratios and all that. And it's just a simple electrode, but there was a hunger for that in the industry. And I think in many ways, I was just blessed to be fortunate with timing. But at the same time, oh man, it culminated a range of experiences I'd had in life and screw ups I'd had in life.
Hmm.
And the social skill set to interact with nerds. You can't spell geek without double E. And most engineers are really nerds, but it takes a lot of communication to, say, start a manufacturing facility. And somehow a lot of that worked. And I have had 5 companies now. I'm on my fifth one, Signal Gear. My fourth one just holds intellectual property, but James, I still don't know that I know what I'm doing per se, but I'm convinced that at companies that you and I know that we both talked about before, big companies, they're winging it every day.
Mhm.
They are making their best guesses, and they're by busy people who don't have the time for it, but somehow they make the time for it. And I look back at the things that I've done, and you sort of just do your best. And I think that's what entrepreneurship really is. And you and I both know so many people who pour their heart and soul into it, and they probably make a lot of mistakes, but through hard work, they just get through it and succeed.
Yep.
And that's probably my story as much as anything, is working extra hard because I know I'm going to make a ton of mistakes, and somehow you get through it.
I mean, I think if you don't make mistakes, you don't learn, and I think mistakes are a part of developing who you are and becoming, the person that you are
Yeah,
now. And I mean, if you don't
yeah,
make those mistakes,
yeah.
you don't learn.
I've got a story that's interesting. I hadn't thought about this until just now. In 2002, have you ever heard of SCORE, Senior Corps of Retired Executives? And they're really a neat group. And a lot of them are, say, the IBM types or
Hmm.
accountants or somebody that's been in business as businessmen and businesswomen. And they will counsel entrepreneurs and they will counsel people who don't know what they're doing and they help them. And I don't want to say anything negative about SCORE, but I took the idea in 2002 of an electrode company to SCORE. And I met with these three nice gentlemen. James, they told me, run, stay away from
Hmm.
that. That's a really terrible idea. And then I started Rhythmlink and it was a rocket ride. And I think that people like you, we could go down a laundry list of people. I know you have Lawrence Wurzbowski. We could go down a laundry list of people we know who probably have everything it takes to be an entrepreneur. And you just have to be willing to have people say, that's a really stupid idea. And
And do
then
it anyway.
yeah, Miriam Donahue, who is such a wonderful friend, she once told me, Brett, you don't have to, you can have low confidence. You can have fear. You just have to be willing to take the step out when you still have the fear and the insecurity. I think she's right.
Yep. No, I completely agree with that. I mean, that's how that's how you move forward is you have a little discomfort and you move into the
Yeah,
discomfort and then you get
yeah,
comfortable and then you
yeah,
move a little bit further into the discomfort. So yeah.
yeah.
So and I don't know. So you have to tell me this because I don't know if Rhythm Link pushed this and made this kind of happen, or if this is something that Rhythmlink just happened to be right at the precipice of when it was happening. But I remember back in the day, I would use reusable needle electrodes, and that's what we use to monitor pretty much all of our procedures. And I knew that the electrodes needed to be replaced when I
Right.
was having to push to get them into my patient's skin, and then I'd replace them. But right about the time that Rhythmlink started producing electrodes, we kind of switched over to everything kind of
Yeah.
disposable, and I think it's safer for the patient. I think it's better patient care, but it was is that something that Rhythmlink was kind of helping to push in the industry, or did you just happen to be at the right time and the right place
I,
when that
I
was
think
happening?
I think perhaps Rhythmlink helped. I think that I was blown away by what I saw when I was doing some research. The average prices for a subdermal needle were close to $5 per needle, and we started at 265 retail price, 265 per needle. And when I look back, that was shockwaves in the industry.
Hmm.
And there were also James. There were back when, and this was in the 90s, and I know you were. I think you were there. I'm not sure, but
I was.
so I there were back orders. People would have back orders with needles, and I was blown away at the. I don't want to put down the companies that were there, but what you know what it's like to be an IOM. You go nuts if you don't have the what you need, and
Hmm.
it's stressful. And we just that price, availability, quality. Just never have poor quality. Always have the product. And it was a rocket ride. And I think, and I when I started, I'm so thankful for Lee McNinch and Jeffrey Owen. I went to work for Jeffrey Owen's company. And I'm so thankful for those experiences. But yeah, James, the things that I did reusing electrodes, I'm mortified by what I'm mortified by what kind of occurred during that time. I think maybe just the lower prices probably pushed it a little bit, but maybe other factors were pushing it too, as far as risk management and people. I wonder, I bet there's still people today that are reusing electrodes.
I
I,
sure hope not, but I wouldn't be surprised. But
I know.
in the '90s, it was the wild, wild west. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I remember making cotton wick electrodes, and then we would sterilize them and we'd use them. Never would
Yeah.
you do that today.
Yeah.
So,
And you knew where you knew where the stairs, where the stair ad, and you just packaged these things. You got them as clean as you could, and off and away they went, and we reused them.
so price, availability, and quality. So how was Rhythmlink able to deliver on all three of those? Because usually, if it's price and availability, quality is not great. If it's quality and availability, price is going to be higher. How was Rhythmlink able to do that and actually make money doing it?
Enormous amounts of work, I think, is the answer. First, we had a contract manufacturer. The University of South Carolina has one of the whole U.S. News and World Report, right?
Hmm.
All
Hmm.
this, whatever uh, they will rank all these programs, and it's this competition to see. I went to Michigan, I went to Iowa, I went to Stanford, and we're number one. Um, and but University of South Carolina has one of the top international business programs in the nation. It's routinely in one of the top one or two or three, and it really is neat because of the things that they put these kids through as far as traveling to other countries, etc. And there was a fella in mainland who did nothing but interact with American companies and other companies setting up fabrication in mainland China. Um, he helped us find a contract manufacturer there. And that was for a couple of years. In 2004, I set up the first rework facility. And then in 2006, I set up a facility um, to really manufacture the product. And um, it was you. The question is about the quality, James. These young people, if you find young people somewhere, you treat them well, and you just set a bar that is never you never drop before below that bar, and that bar is perfection. And if you've got the your workers and you treat them well, and we treated our workers phenomenally, and you say, this is it, this is the bar, and perfection is the bar. If there's anything less than that, you raise your hand, and when they show a problem, you 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 shower them with praise. You just you show them that they will be respected, and you listen and you respond immediately, and they're the ones that will show you how to improve your process. And in mainland China, for us, we just had a super high bar, and you don't go below it. There's no alternative. And if there's a slight flaw, it's imperfection. You just deal with it, and that's how. And oh my gosh, James, the that's at exactly a 12-hour difference, and with a 16-hour flight. Um, and oh man, those were the days. And I'm glad I was younger, but it was
Yeah.
just a lot of flights, a lot of work.
Where did you set up your manufacturing facility in China?
Right outside of Hong Kong.
Hong Kong. Okay. All right.
Yeah, I love Hong Kong. I love flying in there. It's a beautiful
Yeah,
place.
I do too. I think I've told you, but back in the mid '90s, I studied over there.
That's
Lived
right.
in China, so
Yeah,
I was going through Hong Kong just before the
yeah,
handover. It was crazy
yeah,
because they were changing all of the signs
yeah,
from English into
yeah,
Mandarin, and
yeah,
but yeah.
yeah,
Interesting. So,
yeah.
so you know, nobody, I think, graduates from college, gets their degree, and knows how to set up a manufacturing facility.
No,
So,
no,
talk about that. What was that like trying to set up a full blown manufacturing facility to produce these needles at
yeah.
at volume, but also with quality?
There were two young mechanical engineering students, interns, and those kids, those wonderful, wonderful kids, um, helped. And in reality, if you look at automation, um, automation does not have to be complex. Automation, you can do small automation and greatly enhance functionality. And myself and those two awesome kids, they're not kids anymore, but we did the small stage automation to do all that. There was a wonderful, wonderful woman, Chinese national, who I still stay in touch with. She's just so wonderful. You cannot do it without Chinese national, and she interviewed these bright young kids. They were 18, 19, 20. And we started with six who would become our supervisors. James, they were so amazing. And I went over there with Daniel, one of these young engineers who had graduated and was full time at that point. We had so much fun. We worked so hard. And it was working with they're kids. They're 19, 20 years old. You treat them like gold. We went to McDonald's and sang karaoke. It was so fun, hard work. And you bring the right energy. There is no alternative other than perfection in the product. But hey, it's no problem. I mean, it's a stupid piece of stainless steel soldered to 19 strands of tin copper, 36 gauge twisted to 24 gauge, blah blah blah. And they will do it right every single time if you set that as the bar. And it blows me away, James, that companies will scrimp on perfection because it doesn't have to be that way. And when you're able to say, here's the bar, and nobody's there over your shoulder to say, no, we need to cut corners. When you say, there's the bar, these wonderful kids, they'll make it happen. And then you
Hmm,
just treat them right. And you
nice,
listen to them, and you sit around in a circle saying, what are the problems? And if they see that there's the freedom to talk and blah blah blah, they'll tell you what the problems are, and then you just say, okay, how do we fix them? And 99
nice,
out of 100, they will fix it if you just listen to them. So
nice.
was wonderful. Hard work.
So when you guys launched Rhythmlink, I mean, it was kind of a new concept. It was new disposable electrodes. The prices were lower. I have to imagine that you got a lot of animism or animus directed towards you from other companies. How did you guys handle? How did you guys work through
You
that?
know, it was. I still, the guys. Let's just say I'm going to use three because they're my friends. They're my friends, And you know the guys at Technomed, you know the guys at Spez, you know the guys from Ambu. I became friends with them, and there was not a big animosity. There was a lot of shaking of the heads, going, "Why did you start out at that price? Why did you start out at that price?" But it wasn't. I I remember. I'm trying to remember. Did I set that price? I think I may have, because I started it. Sean came on, and Michael came on in 2003, and I it just seemed like the right price. It seemed like a fair price, and that just went with it. And it wasn't to harm everybody. It just seemed like the fair price. Yeah, there
That's
was a lot of head shaking, but
hmm.
those people are my friends. I've always been friendly with the Ambu folks. I have always been friendly with the Technomed folks, and I collaborate a lot with the Spez folks. And
Gotcha.
you know,
Nice.
I don't know. They probably still would like to maybe at least slap me with a switch from time to time about that.
and, and now, compared to the pricing that the Rhythmlink set back then, I mean it's commodity pricing now. What do you think about that? I mean, because needles have become
Yeah,
kind of a commodity product at this
I think
point.
that's the way it works. I mean, I really do. And you know, the free market's a wonderful thing, and I I hope that the free market is allowed to continue, and um, that the more competition, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing.
Right.
So I I love it.
So where do you see needle technology heading in the future?
I
Or
really
has
don't know if I want to talk about that, because I'm working on some stuff. But um, I think now let's get to the fun stuff, my good friend. You know that signal. I mean, most of the time it's a quadrupole that we might be looking at. A lot of times it's a dipole, and a dipole tends to attenuate with the square of the distance. A quadrupole
hmm
tends to attenuate with the cube of the distance. So by the time we are mere, you know, a centimeter away from the generator, we have lost an enormous amount of complexity favoring the high frequencies. Dude, I could talk to you all day, because
I love this
half the
stuff.
time I want to ask you questions on stuff that you know way better than I do. But you know that in reality, so much of stuff that we're trying to do is to get close to that generator, right?
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
that's the secret. And the further away, the lower the number of turns, the less dense the morphology, et cetera, et cetera. So I think needles, if you look at the standard EMG needle with monopolar or concentric EMG needles, I think it's just going to be to make them more comfortable. But those physiatrists are always going to need that needle.
hmm
Have you ever had the APB done, James?
It
Have you ever had it?
hurts. It hurts a
You
lot,
did it.
especially
Yeah.
with a dull needle.
Yeah. So, I mean, those physiatrists and neurologists, they need sharp needles. And I think
Going just
that's,
like butter. That's what they want.
yeah, yeah. So I think that we will always wind up using needles. That's a good question. Do you think so too?
I mean, I don't know what other technology we're going to move to.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have talked about this before, and I would love to see at some point we move to a situation where the minute the needle is recording the signal, it's digitized so that we don't have the noise
hmm
contamination.
hmm
And I know that there's some challenges with sampling rate and all of that stuff. But I would love for the technology to move in that direction.
Hey, may I say something about that?
Sure,
Dude,
please
and
do.
I sorry, when I get excited, my rate of saying dude is directly proportional to the level of my excitement. But
Uh,
James, Bluetooth 4 was enough to transmit 15 or 16 channels of dense morphology EMG wirelessly. And it's not the technology that is there as far as transmitting that and having the bandwidth to transmit that much EMG information. It's the to go there's a lot of testing, and that we're seeing that with these EEG caps where they're actively
gotcha.
recording at the EEG, and it took a long time for somebody to break the first FDA barrier. And I think that we will see more and more of that in the OR, but it's really the cost of the electronic components that when you take, sometimes it's less than $2 worth of subdermal needles in a pair, tibialis anterior. And it's hard to compete with $1.70 worth of needles in the tibialis
Yeah,
anterior. And you're going to put electronics to amplify that and transmit that wirelessly. That's hard to compete with. And those same people that may be reusing single use only needles are going to pay an extra $3, $4 to get to get that pair of needles where they're transmitting that. And then the regulatory involved, I think that those are the barriers. The technology is there. It's fascinating to look at what's happening, like going to SNF, Society for Neuroscience. Their stuff, their research stuff is already so established for capturing and wirelessly transmitting data in mouse
hmm.
brains, rat brains, etc. Fascinating stuff.
So do you think there's the potential for making the transmission component reusable, where it's a one-time thing, you buy it and then you have the electrodes, that you attach to that basically are just the needle that's disposable, that could bring the cost down? So
Perhaps, but as long as I mean, this is a question for you. Is it going to touch tissue? And would that be accepted, especially in the OR where you've got surgery gradu,
yeah,
just clinging to stuff? I don't know. It's a great question, and one
yeah,
that I'm sure you and I are going to talk about the next time we're sitting
I
talking.
I would love to see that. I mean, can you imagine? Well, no, I already know you can imagine because you've probably seen it, but just how clean the signals would be.
Yeah.
I mean, the recording data,
Oh yeah.
60 hertz
No.
noise, a thing of the past. I mean, I
Yeah.
would love that. So,
Yeah. But in reality, I mean, we could sit and talk about this stuff all day. In reality, it's like if you take a 13 millimeter subdermal on something that is 6 centimeters away, and you've got adipose tissue, no matter where it's at, where um, that we have already we have attenuated so much of that signal
hmm.
through constructive and destructive summation, through just volume conduction loss, because the signal is volume conducting out on a sphere, and you get this intensity divided by attenuated by the cube of the distance.
Hmm.
um, you get capacitive losses, and you just get impedance losses. And I think that that's one of our real biggies right there.
Yeah.
I think we actually do amazingly well with our equipment um, now. I mean, I've got I guess I can say this. I'm not pushing this. I have many different pieces of equipment, but my newest amplifiers are a Cascade Pro, and they're so much better than my old amplifiers, which are really old. Um, and our stuff, and it's just in the semiconductors. Everything is in this tiny chip. Therefore, it winds up being a lot. The amplifiers wind up being a lot better. They're amazing, aren't they?
Yeah,
Do you
they
do
are.
you notice that too, James? That
Yeah,
it's so much
I
better.
mean, the data that we record now. I mean, I used back in the day Quantum 84, 4 channel
Yeah,
system,
yeah.
and I mean, at the time that was great. I love that system, but yeah, I mean, the data is definitely cleaner. I think
Mhm.
today with the amplifiers and the
Yeah,
technology that we're using
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Um,
Fun stuff, man. Fun stuff.
So, of all the directions you could have taken with your career, why electrical engineering and why
Yeah.
neurodiagnostics?
Right, right. The neurodiagnostics one's easier. That all right? I'll tell you. um, Electrical engineering. When I was four, um, there was some movie on TV, right? And I think it was some John Wayne movie, maybe, and right, and flying in World War II fighter planes. And those fighter planes were buzzing around. And I looked at my dad and I said, I want to do that. And I had to have been 4 years old because of where we were living. And I remember he was there, I was here, I looked, I pointed, and ever since then, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And when I was a junior, they like electrical, they like engineers in their in the cockpit. So I did
Gotcha,
electrical
gotcha.
engineering, and when I was a junior in electrical engineering, the Air Force Medical Review Board told me, "No way, Jose, because I've got a cracked skull. I've got a plastic plate right here about the size of a quarter. When I was
Gotcha.
four, I cracked my skull, and now you know what's wrong with me." But uh, so you know why I did electrical? That I think we do such a disservice to the kids. And it was this way for me. I took a series of tests, for entrance exams, all this, and a guidance counselor said, you know, you're really scored high. You probably should do electrical instead of mechanical. And I did. That's the entire reason that I did. I wanted to do mechanical. I love mechanical things, right? And I'm glad I did electrical, but that's why. And
Nice.
it really works out well for this field. And then neuroscience. All right. I did at the exercise physiology program at South Carolina is another one of those. It bounces back and forth with Michigan, which I know you know. Their
Mm-hmm.
their kinesiology program, South Carolina's, the University of Florida, I think maybe Stanford. I don't remember. They'll bounce around. Oh, we're the top. We're the best. And it really is a great program. And I discovered this program living in Columbia, South Carolina, working in a cubicle as an electrical engineer, um, which I was dying a slow death sitting in a cubicle. And
Hmm.
I was fascinated by biomechanics and biomechanics really. And even though I didn't have a background in it, I'd done electrical engineering. They said, well, you can probably handle it. And they let me in the program and I did my master's. When I was doing my master's, there was this guy named Larry Green. He was doing his PhD on contralateral movement patterns, in phase and out of phase movement patterns. Like with the hand, this is in
Mm-hmm.
phase, both hands are doing, this is out of phase. And he was doing a rig. And since I was electrical engineer, I helped him some with his rig to look at click with metronome patterns. And I started studying spinal pattern generators, reflex chaining in the
Hmm.
cord. James, I was just so hooked. And it was like, holy smokes, this is cool stuff. And I wanted to do something in neuroscience. I almost went for a PhD at IU Bloomington, where Rich Vogel went, and I had an invitation. I had a stipend. James, I was so tired of being poor, and I could go to work monitoring the brain and cord. Thank you very much, Lee McNinch and Jeffrey Owen, and I did, and that was how I found this field. And I'm
Nice.
so thankful. Those were hard days, man, but I'm thankful for the experience, and it got my foot in this door.
Nice. Well, we're happy to have you in the field. So, I I wanted to go back when you were talking about your guidance counselor. I've heard stories like that. So many times. I think that it's important for people that are guiding impressionable, new people, new people trying to figure out what am I going to do with my life. They make a huge impact on the
Huge.
direction of lives. So I think
Yeah.
it's really important for people to stop and think about the advice that they give.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it this field I kind of fell into it too, and I love the field. I'm just so thankful that I didn't even know this field existed when I was in
Yeah.
college, and here
Yeah.
I am. So,
Yeah.
but
I'm sure I'm one of many who is so thankful for you and Kent doing
Kent, I love
the
Kent.
education you did. That set the stage for you, the things that you do now. I think that's why you're such a great educator. And I
Well, thank
know I'm
you.
not supposed to be interviewing you, but sorry, you're my friend. So you're
Well,
tops,
thanks.
James.
I appreciate it. Thank you. So I'll try to live up to that.
Me too.
All right. So, what is your favorite part of the field
Mm.
of? So, first, your favorite part of the field of electrical engineering.
Oh wow. Yeah, I had not thought about that specific question, but I can address that. All right, I'm an old school electrical dude, and I need to tell a little story, but I like old analog electronics, radar, electromagnetics, like weapon system, this thing tracking that thing analog. And that's because I was very fortunate. I was a poor kid. There were times I worked 3 jobs to put myself through school, and I'm so thankful for that. Um, but I went to 2 year school at Asheville Buncombe Technical College, and I'm
Hmm.
so thankful to William P. Fisher and Bob Weisselman. We've lost Mr. Fisher, and I think Bob Weisselman is down in Florida now. But that 2 year education for electronics, electrical engineering technology,
Hmm.
whatever, and then I transferred to Clemson. James, that was, I don't want to put down Clemson or Auburn or NC State or Stanford or University of Michigan or MIT, but I'm convinced the kids that go to 2 year technical schools frequently get a better basic education than the ones who go to calculus based, um, advanced engineering type program degrees. And Mr. Fisher was this old Navy dude. He
Hmm.
took no prisoners. And I mean, he was an animal. And I sat on the front row, and it was hard. And I'm so thankful. Ohm's law, um, time constants, capacitance, inductance, resonance, transmission theory. Um, we rode that pony till it was done, and
Hmm.
that was so much better than you go to a place like Clemson's a very mature engineering school, like NC State, like University of Florida, like Michigan,
Hmm.
and they will flood you in these engineering courses with these nothing but calculus based complex things again and again and again. And if you're good at taking tests, you take the test and you pass the courses and you walk away. Well, tell me about DC motors. Uh, well, I know there's this complex thing, and I remembered it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you walk away from that without getting that much. Well, you don't do that at 2 year school. So I brought that into this neurophysiology gig, where I like this is a bag of goop that's very ionic, even the skin. And we have the definition of capacitor is two conductive things. And the closer you get them, the more capacitance you've got. And I'm so thankful within neuroscience, James, we have so much to learn about capacitance. Have you ever heard of gooey layers? There's a term
No.
if you look at the literature set on deep brain stimulation. Well, all right, you could run circles around me with my knowledge on this, but we have all of these junction voltages endlessly in tissue, right? For cellular membrane potentials, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that is basically a little battery and another little battery and endless little things that we're constantly having to push through with electricity. And I came to this field thinking about capacitance and inductance and impedance. And I think that that's where the answers are on a lot of this stuff as far as neuromonitoring. And I still feel like I ain't got a clue, but I think that I'm very fortunate to have brought that. And if there's anything I could do, it would be to help the average person, whether it like it that goes to work for a mobile company, to help them realize that's really simple. They just need to study it a little bit and start understanding it themselves. And then you got people like you who go above and beyond, and you just become a guy like you become a stud because you take the time to study it. It's true.
I'll pay you later.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
So, moving into neuroscience, then, what fascinates you the most about neuroscience in the
Oh
field
wow,
and where it's headed
wow.
or where it's come from,
I
even?
think I I think for me, um, I don't know that this is what's most fascinating. I could spend 4 hours a day the rest of my life till I kill over dead studying high level text, just reading about the brain and cord, and just be like a kid in a candy store. And then hopefully have another few hours in a day to tinker and play and try to come up with stuff. But that's just because it's really fascinating. But when I look at things that I might be able to contribute, we do this stuff with square waves, right, James?
Mm-hmm.
And the front end and the back end of that square wave are high frequency, really high frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then the middle is really low frequency. And by the time that is in a centimeter into tissue, it's a blob because of various things, primarily capacitive component of impedance. And I think, you may and I may have had this conversation before. We do this stuff looking at pedicle screws, or
Mm-hmm.
we do this stuff looking at stimulating some particular thing, facial nerve or something like that, with these various stimulations. And we think that we're stimulating with XYZ, or we stimulate with these pulse trains, and we think we're stimulating with XYZ. And a lot of the old pedicle screw stuff didn't even tightly look at um, pulse width the same way that they did with amplitudes of stimulation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge mistake to not contemplate when we stimulate with a wider pulse width, we're changing the power band with which we're stimulating. And what I would love to contribute is to study that more with pulse width. Um, And there's great author Merrill. You probably remember this. Like oh my goodness, I can't believe what is the wonderful neurologist who has done the stuff as far as optimizing montages. McDonald, David
Oh yeah,
McDonald, and
McDonald.
he
Yep.
did the work on TCMEP stimulation, etc. And Merrill is really important. I think he was at Purdue. Really important biomedical engineering guy who's looked at all this stuff on stimulation and the reversible and the irreversible. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if you go with pulse widths that are out here too far, you can deliver irreversible charges, which can be really have unpleasant things. I would love to do more looking at just pulse width alone. Um, and I'm trying to think of other stuff that here's another one about electrical engineering and neuroscience. The speed of light, electricity is trying to travel at the speed of light. It's trying to travel around the Earth, the surface of the Earth, 7 times in a second.
Mm-hmm.
That's how fast it is. And the fastest nerves in our body don't even go a full football field in a second. And so we've got this neural conduction, saltatory conduction, that is going so slow, yet everything else in the body, once that signal is generating, it's trying to travel through our body or on our skin at the speed of light. And I think there's a lot of stories to tell there. Um, and I don't know what they are, but that would be fun to
Mm.
study more.
Yeah, I mean, volume conducted electricity traveling at the speed of light. I think stimulus artifacts. Some of the things that we're doing now.
Yeah.
I think of laryngeal adductor reflex monitoring, for instance.
Yes.
That is the
Yes.
bane of our existence when we're
Yeah.
trying to do that. Getting rid of
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
but.
It- and you remember um, Dr. Happel and all his what a guy,
Mm,
just a diamond.
yep, love that, Dr.
But
Apple.
and he would talk about his tripolar stimulation with Dr. Klein,
Hmm.
and they would do this stuff. And you probably know this. They would do this in the brachial plexus, and back when he would use earth ground. And he would connect the ESU 13,000 square millimeter huge surface pad on the patient's hip, and he would use that on his tripolar stimulator when he was doing the tripolar stimulation, placing a ground electrode or that ground,
Hmm. Hmm.
earth ground on the hip with this stimulation. It would get rid of the stimulus artifact before that signal went to 4 centimeters or whatever it was in the wound. And it would
Hmm.
blitz, it would completely get rid of that stimulus artifact from earth ground. And we don't have that anymore. Earth ground was so good, yet that signal is trying to travel at the speed of light from here all the way down to that large surface pad, and it completely eliminated it when we could use earth ground. And that's how fast these signals, that stimulus artifact, is seeking to travel at the speed of light on our skin. And Dr. Happel used that when he could use earth ground, and it
Yep.
completely obliterated the stimulus artifact.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you think they'll let me use Earth Ground in the OR today?
Not a chance. Not a chance. In fact, you're
uh,
my friend. Don't try it. I mean,
don't worry.
I guess you would get,
Uh,
I mean, they would, I don't know what they would do, but it's illegal.
yeah, they would
It's against
probably
FDA
kick me out of the
regulations.
OR forever if I did
Yeah.
that. So, hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, l- understanding some of these, and one of the other things that I learned from you talking about patient burns, pulse width, I think, is one of the biggest factors in determining if a patient is going to have, an electrochemical burn at the stimulus site. Talk
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that because I don't think people really understand that.
And I will start it with this, James. I really question it myself because I know people, and you know them too, who are using even 1 second durations on
Mm.
pulse width. Um, and no, not 1 second.
One thousand
Yeah, one,
microsecond or
yeah.
1,000
Sorry,
microseconds.
yeah.
Yeah.
But instead of point one, they're using 1 millisecond, one
Yeah.
millisecond durations. Sorry. So um, when I was very fortunate, Doctor Stecker and Matt Stevenson, I did help a tiny amount. They included me on the publication. There was a set of experiments that they did where we took subdermal needles and we stuck subdermal needles down, in something right full of
Mm-hmm.
juice.
Mm-hmm.
It was like saline. It was a bicarbonate type of situation, I think, where it was very much like blood, and it was very electrolytic and stimulated
Mm-hmm.
at certain consistent frequencies and with different pulse widths and with different intensities. And um, the ramping up that pulse width beyond what we're normally used to, not 1 millisecond, but like 10 milliseconds, started really degrading those electrodes.
Mm.
And the first thing that comes out of them is nickel. And then the other components of the stainless steel start just coming out. And finally, you will just dissolve that. You basically giving the patient a tattoo with
Mm.
the metal ions of metal that just disperse out. And I here's the thing, James. I'm not that certain that we get anywhere near that, even when these people are using these 1 millisecond durations. But it's certainly enough to scare me,
Yeah.
and I do think it warrants more work.
Yeah. No, I do too. I think patient safety and what we're doing, with the electricity that we're using, I don't think we understand it enough. I worry about it with transcranial motor potential stimulation. That's one of
Yeah,
my soapboxes is,
yeah,
measuring and marking and placing
yeah,
your electrodes properly and working with
yeah,
anesthesia to have a properly controlled anesthetic so that you don't have to use, 1,000 volts to stimulate the patient to activate the cortical spinal tracts.
yeah,
I mean, because we don't know what we're doing. I think in some of those instances, so the
yeah,
more
yeah.
careful we can be with our patients, I think the better. So
Yeah, I love it. I love it at conferences when somebody will say, "We've never had a seizure from this," and you raise your hand and tell them
mm,
about what you've experienced. So
yeah,
I think that helps.
I mean, I was one of those people that said I've never had a seizure. Don't think it's something that we would experience. And then lo and behold, I'm the only one doing anything in that room to that patient at the time, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden my patient starts having a seizure. So I
Yeah,
mean, I'm a believer. So,
yeah, yeah.
but
I think we got a lot to learn, and I hope to be a part of a small part of whatever I can be a part of. So it's fun
well,
stuff.
we'll be glad to have you. So okay. So Dr. Mora and I talked about this when I was fortunate enough to interview her, and you were there at ASM. You got to hear the keynote. Dr. Chang and some of the things that they're doing with language,
Mhm.
mapping brain surfaces and replicating a patient's ability to speak
Mhm.
using, AI and language
Yeah,
models. And That is, I mean, some of the things that I see and hear that are happening in the broader field of neuroscience, neurodiagnostics are just, pretty amazing to me that we're even moving in those directions.
Yep.
So where do you see the field of neurodiagnostics headed? Are we coming out with new methods of doing neuromonitoring, or new technologies, or
Yeah.
what do you think?
I go to a lot of engineering conferences now. Um, I'll tell you, there was one, I went to one on surface finishing of metals, and it's primarily for people that do electroplating. But I have a term that I look for, NGGs. I try to find the nice guru geezers. And you want to find this dude. It's usually some dude that's been electroplating for 40 years and he's still in it. And he may have been an engineer, but he has just been doing this and he understands the processes. And I go to those things and I just learn so much. And the ceramic engineering conferences, the conferences on just transducers, sensing things, conferences on automation. And I look, James, and things are just getting so small, even like 3D printing. Um, there's something called MIMS, micro electromechanical systems. Or I forget what the acronym, and it's tiny little processes that are occurring mechanically, and we are seeing more and more stuff. And that keynote was amazing, and it's
Hmm.
because they're able to fabricate tiny things and they're getting these densities that are just stunning. And a lot of, there's places like the microneedle world. Have you ever heard of microneedles? Have you ever heard of derma roller? There will be
Yeah,
a
actually.
derma, yeah, and they roll it, and it's got little needles that are, I think that it will be like less than like 2 millimeters, pretty small, right?
Hmm.
And little sharp needles, and they go deep enough to not necessarily penetrate the uh, and run into sensory nerve endings, or Meissner's corpuscles, or
Hmm.
these other things that you don't want to get to. And so they're not causing pain, but they're going through the skin. The things are getting so small and fabrication techniques are getting better. So I go to these engineering type meetings and I see these tiny things. And I think that we're going to experience that with fabrication techniques that deliver the ability to put far more sensors into a much higher density. And I don't know how that's going to impact us. I think that it can't be anything but good. you
Yeah.
know it all depends on where you can get it, right? How far can we put this in?
Right.
Where can we place that? And
Yep.
delivering that is going to be the key, and that's above my pay grade. It really is.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm really excited. I think about where things are headed, with new technologies, and
Yeah.
with artificial intelligence, and how that's going to impact our field. What do you think
Yeah.
about AI? How do you think that's going to impact neuromonitoring?
I was asked to do a presentation. It was at ASM, on smart systems, and
You're
that's
writing a
been,
paper on that too, aren't you?
yeah, I
Yeah.
did. And that's really old, but I mean, the concept of smart system is basically an algorithm. I mean, smart system is these automatic AED,
Hmm.
the ones that are in airplanes, and you put on the sensors, and it checks for whatever, Winky Bach or Trigemini, or just they're in VFib, shock, right? And those systems have an algorithm, and they've got a database. And when it asset, I'm on the asset innovation task force, and we just did a publication, and we're submitting it now on computer brain interfaces,
Mm-hmm.
which in many instances are using AI to try to come up with some wonderful outcome. And they're really awesome. They're exciting. Um, when you look at sorry, let me go back. When you look at the smart systems, the two things, having an algorithm and populating a database for something like heart rate, it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
There's books that cover all of the different rhythms with the heart. They're very distinguishable. But look at the craziness that we've got, James, with the
Mm-hmm.
EEG. And I don't see AI being able to do that without a Stan Skinner, Lawrence Rosbowski, Michelle Mora, um, James Watt, Kent Rice. I don't see it being able to have that intuition. I could be wrong, but I think there will always be a place for us in the equation. And the father of AI has routinely said AI will never replace the expert. It will be an extender for the expert. I think as long as that happens, I'm okay with it.
Yeah,
But
I would agree. I mean, I think it makes the expert better. It gives us, I
yeah,
guess, higher fidelity of our
yeah,
expertise and
I
the
like it.
decisions that we can make.
It's a
So,
nice one. That's a good one,
uh,
James. So, have you seen the Boston Dynamics dogs? The
no, I
robot?
have not. No.
They're pretty scary, and it scares me that DARPA is now looking at perturbations, various verbal perturbations and others, to give to soldiers in the field to tweak their responses accordingly, and to give them AI to weaponize robots.
Hmm.
It's scary. So I share a lot of the trepidation about AI, but I'm not necessarily. I think in our world, it's probably going to be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think AI is just like every other technology. I mean, nuclear fusion, nuclear fission, those things. I mean, we get a lot of benefit out of,
Yeah,
nuclear power plants, for instance, but then we can cause, a lot of destruction using those technologies. So I think it
right.
depends on how we choose to use
Yeah,
technology, because it can always have I mean, a, a positive, and then there's always an evil aspect to it too.
well said.
So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
so we have not even talked about what you're doing now, which is producing bladder monitoring electrodes. And um, I think you probably know more about bladder monitoring than anybody in the field. So talk to us a little bit about that.
yeah. That was a very kind statement that I don't think is true. And I have studied, like I studied. It was interesting that electrode. It was Lee Ray is the retired ENT surgeon who started Neurovision Medical, that
Mm-hmm.
endotracheal tube wraparound type electrode, and he's such a neat guy. He's very special to me. And we were sitting around. There may have been a beer involved. I don't remember. And we were sitting around, and there we knew there was a need to monitor the external urinary sphincter, and we started talking. And in about 5 minutes, we basically had the design. And uh, I went and did the primary lit review, which was really hard, James. The neural anatomy of the pelvic floor. I was looking at something the other day. there's still so many questions about
Hmm.
the anatomical variations, the neuroanatomy variations in the pelvic floor. And I had to start finding out where to put the contacts for where the striated musculature of the external urinary sphincter is in males and females across different ages, et cetera, et cetera. And we did our best effort on that and designed the electrode, went through the, the, the very challenging process of getting it approved and did. And lo and behold, the thing works. We made some modifications, but what really surprises me is how well the external urinary sphincter records from monitoring from the endothelial lining of the urethra. It must be really thin because that striated musculature is giving some fairly robust responses to the
Hmm.
electrode sitting on the surface of the catheter. And it's not like needles intramuscularly in the external anal sphincter, but it's pretty robust. I I have been surprised by a couple of things. I have been surprised that the pudendal nerve, the fibers from the pudendal nerve that innervate the external urinary sphincter, that tease off and go that route, they don't always fire in synchrony with the anal sphincter. And this is true whether it really at really low intensity stimulation at a tumor site. They frequently will fire in synchrony, but they don't always.
Hmm.
So I predict that there is value in monitoring both. Um, and it will be interesting to see the reflexes that come out. Like Justin Silverstein's group just published on, instead of recording an endpoint from the anal sphincter with bulbocavernosus reflex, recording from the external urinary sphincter. And there's some different stimulation parameters that help. But that's a different value point. And I predict that there's some reflexes that will come about, and not just from that, not just from the external urinary sphincter, but reflex responses from pelvic floor stuff, maybe at other sites. I mean, there's
Hmm.
other nerves down there. Um, but my friend, I still wonder, like, where the whole onus nucleus type of stuff. The truth is that I I wish I knew more. But there's
Hmm.
people out there that are using it. It seems to work quite well, and I think everybody wants to use it in radical prostatectomies and find a silver bullet with radical prostatectomies, which is yet to be done, obviously.
Hmm. Yep. Yep. Hmm. So, urinary sphincter monitoring today. What does the next 10 years hold for Brett Netherton?
I don't see myself ever retiring. I would think I would fall over dead if I retired. Although I want to get out on, and James, you got to come to Lake Murray. You and Lisa need to come, and we're going to go out on a pontoon boat. You've seen my pontoon boat in the
It's quite the
yeah,
pontoon boat.
yeah, yeah, the rope swing on the top. But I want to
Uh,
go. I want to play on the lake more. But I'm sorry, sitting in there in the lectures at the conferences is too fun for me not to go to.
yeah.
I To be serious, I would like to shift over into motor control stuff. I
Hmm.
think that there's a population that, like, I'm very interested in kids that are on like Ritalin, and I don't want to make negative statements about these pharmacologic type of interventions for these kids that are on that have these various, attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity, etc. However, I I'm very interested in motor control in that literature set and what happens if I tense and relax, tense and relax. What's happening to our nervous system? And I would love to see fewer kids on these pharmacological.
Hmm.
agents. There's many other things, biomechanical things. I love. There's a guy named Frank Jobe, Jobe. I think he's passed away now, unfortunately. And yeah, have you heard of Tommy John surgery? The
Hmm.
baseball pitchers get Tommy John surgery. He did the. He's the one who developed the Tommy John surgery, and he did a lot with the golf swing, where he started looking at the biomechanics of the golf swing. He looked at baseball swing and things like that. I, I would love to spend more time doing things like
Hmm.
that, even martial arts, looking at looking at reaction times. Like our world is this clinical world, and it's fun. I mean, how rewarding is it to see that you impacted the outcome of a surgery from it being a bad outcome? Right, that's special.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it can be fun also maybe to study. Have you ever heard of YIPS? YEPS? Like the golf. You ever
Hmm.
seen Charles Barkley's golf swing?
Yeah, I have seen Charles Barkley
Okay,
swing. Yes.
Charles Barkley has yips,
Okay.
and it is basically a gifted athlete. Charles Barkley is a gifted athlete, but for some reason, mentally, he he really freaks out with his golf swing. It happens in baseball, happens in golf, and it would be fun to look at that stuff. I don't know. I
Hmm.
need to come see you guys more,
It's
and that may be in the
interesting.
next 10 years. I don't know.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
So Charles Barkley and I share the same problem with our golf swing. And my golf swing, the longer I play the game, the worse I get. So
interesting.
I think it
More
has to do
beer.
with you get yes, beer does help relax the golf swing a little bit.
I'm sure there's a peak, and then it probably would drop off.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So who in your mind has had some of the greatest impact in the field of neuromonitoring and neurodiagnostics,
Oh wow!
and
And
why?
that. For me, Mark Stecker. I thought about
Okay.
that earlier. Mark Stecker is this interesting guy. And do you know Dr. Stecker?
I do. Yep.
So he's this PhD physicist, right? I forget where, and then he's a neurologist at Harvard, MD. And his stuff on the cortical cap, the electromagnetics of the cortical cap, I used to kind of stand in awe of it. And then I got to know him, and we're like 2 10-year-old boys when we get to sit and talk. I'm peppering him with questions, and we talk about electronics. We talk about different theories, and he's this bundle of energy.
Hmm.
And he helped me see that here I am sitting with one of the smartest guys, and yet I was having a fine old time. And it helped me see that it helped me not be insecure
Hmm. Hmm.
and just interact with people. And now I don't know how many. I think we've got 5 or 6 publications, and I know
Nice.
it'd be fun to do more with him. Um, and he really had a big influence on me, I think. And there's probably
Nice.
a ton of other. My gosh, I mean, people that were just helpful to me: Chris Martin, Xiaofeng Zhang. Um, uh, in the beginning, that were really special. Kind of took a potato head like me under their wing and helped me out.
Shepherded you into the field.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so
Nice.
thankful. I'm sure you got stories like that. I mean, what a treat to have people who push you along. You
We
know.
have so many brilliant people in the field, and
Yeah.
most of them are so willing to share
Yeah.
and teach
Yeah.
if you're just open to
Yeah.
listening and learning and asking
Yeah.
questions.
It's funny,
Yep.
man. It's like I know I give you kudos, and you like want to kill me, but and I get it, I do. But then there's so many others, James. Miriam Donahue, I mentioned her. She's a rock star, And it's like
Hmm.
she'll be tentative about, what she's bringing to the table. And it's like, we got some bright people in this field.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
Definitely. So
love
it's a
it.
great field. Okay, so I've kept you for almost an hour and a half now. So a couple parting questions here, and then
Oh
I'll let
boy.
you go. So what is the most interesting thing about you that those of us that know you or have listened to you for the last hour and 15
Yeah,
minutes may
yeah.
not already know?
I don't know if this is going to harm me or not, but my grandfather was my best friend growing up, and
Okay.
now my country accent's going to come back. I'm a farm boy. I'm a farm boy from a tall mountaintop in North Carolina, and my grandpa farmed with a mule.
Okay.
So I actually grew up without a farming, without a tractor in Western North Carolina. We had cattle. We would grow we would have 5, 6 acres of pumpkins at Thanksgiving. We would had cattle. We would grow corn, and that was that was so good, man.
Hmm.
Hard
Hmm.
work. I've pushed a hand plow before,
That is
and
hard work.
yeah, and I grew burley tobacco, cut tobacco day in, day out.
Hmm.
Really hard work, and I'm thankful. I wish every kid could experience that. And, Grandpa would, the whole time, there wasn't 15 minutes that went by that he wasn't asking me my multiplication tables
Hmm.
or something about the Constitution or something about whatever, the Bill of Rights or something. And yeah, I don't know. So I'm an old
So
farm boy.
So, what's the most important lesson you learned from your grandpa? What's the one thing that stands out
I
that he taught
think
you?
the value of freedom. And
Hmm.
I hope that regardless of anybody's politics, freedom of speech, um, you have to work at it. You have to. I mean, even ours, like you've got to work hard to have enough money to go to see, for you to go see Alabama play or to go up to Michigan and go back to Michigan, or, you and Lisa want to go on a cruise. You've got to work to earn
Mm-hmm.
that. And I think that may have been it.
Nice.
It's that if you don't work, you don't eat.
Yep. Yep.
That was special.
Grandparents have a way of teaching us and sticking with us.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, three books that have had the biggest impact on you and why?
And I knew this one. If anyone tries to get this from me, this is from 1985. In fact, this author, this is Introduction to Electric Circuits. This was a 2-year author. This guy, Ronald J. Tocci, Tocci. If you want some good electronics texts on circuits, on basic electrical phenomena, Tocci is tough to beat because he
Nice.
wrote for 2-year tech schools. It's trig based math, and that book I look at constantly. This book, this guy
And what is the
Schmidt,
name of the book? Motor Control
motor
and Learning?
control and learning.
Okay.
When I was in grad school, it was like a 700 level course in my master's. James, I could not put that book down. I read the whole
Hmm.
thing like a novel, and it's on motor control. And in reality, that more than anything changed my life.
Hmm.
And uh, There is another book, The Partnership Charter by David Gage. The Partnership Charter by David Gage, Gage. And he's a clinical psychologist who started working with family businesses, and he discovered they are train wrecks for the partners.
Mm-hmm.
And this book, and I know you've been in business, and you've had business partners. It helped me understand the factors that Harvard, that different business schools don't teach about having a business, partners. And when I was selling, I was the majority owner of Rhythmlink, and I sold to my minority partners, which was fantastic. Um, that book really helped me
Hmm.
understand partnership is not something to enter into lightly. And that was really just every page I read, I was like, whoa, that really impacted me.
Interesting. Yeah, partnerships they can be wonderful, and they can
Yeah.
be very difficult things too.
Yeah.
Especially if you're not prepared when you go
Yep.
into the partnership and have all of the
Oh, yeah.
different possibilities figured out ahead of
Oh, yeah.
time. So even the
It's
ones you don't think
wise.
you'll ever encounter.
That book
So
was helpful. I sat up
nice.
on top of the Enterprise aircraft carrier in Charleston, South Carolina all day, and I read that book.
Nice.
Oh, it was
Okay,
good.
so that brings me to the next question. Did you ever make it into a fighter jet?
No,
No.
no.
Would
My
you if you had the
nephew,
opportunity?
no, my nephew flew F-22s,
Okay. All
which
right.
is the air superiority fighter, and now he's back in F-15s by choice. And I listened to that, and I just smile. But I want to get back into flying because I have 50 hours. I have 30 hours solo time from the 80s, so I would need to do that
Okay.
basically all over again to keep from killing myself or somebody. Um, you know, I flying is special. Just being up there,
Hmm.
it'd be fun.
Nice. All right. So, last question, and I think you've already kind of given me some of these, but the three people that have had the most significant impact on your life: one personal, one professional, and one either.
Yeah, that no one I hadn't thought about. Let me do this. Clearly, the personal is probably my grandfather.
Yeah.
I think about him every day. Um, Professional Steve McNeil. Steve McNeil is a mechanical engineering professor at the University of South Carolina. And if you talk to him, you don't know whether he is a plumber, he may be a welder, or once you start talking to him, you go, you're really smart. Maybe you're a professor. And
Hmm.
he invited me into an inventing group at and we had so much fun until Ryan, who was the smartest one in the bunch, and he was invited to MIT to do his PhD in mechanical engineering. And McNeil has helped me see so many things about the world from an engineering perspective, and he is the one who he will he'll slap me on the head and say, "You're an engineer, aren't you? Well, solve the problem. It's a
Hmm.
problem, right? Solve it." So special man. And
Nice.
he's now retired. Um, I'm going to say Mark Stecker for those reasons. Mark Stecker, here he is, this super bright guy who was willing to just really hang out and spend time. That really helped me personally. And then a million others, including you.
Well, thank you. Nice.
Yeah,
I
your filter stuff, my friend, I need to come there and we really need to spend some time because I really want to look at the things you've discovered about filters
Anytime.
from
Come on
a
over.
charge. Yeah, deal. Yep.
Cool. All right. And the last question for you, and then I'll let you go because you've been hanging out with me for quite a while, and I appreciate it.
No
And
problem.
I know the Neuropod community has gotten a lot out of this, so I appreciate you spending your time talking to us. But what parting thoughts do you have for the Neuropod community?
Um, I guess if anybody is young that's listening to this, look at James's career, look at my career. both of us started out um, as rookies.
Mm-hmm.
And if you embrace the journals, if you embrace going and talking to Jeff Balzer, going and talking to Stan Skinner, going and talking to Josh Murgos, go and talk to Lawrence Worzbowski, go and talk to Michelle Mora, go talk to James Watt. Feel free to come up and talk to me. Pick our brains. Find your place in this field. And that would be, I mean, we've got such bright people. This field will really reward you if you do that, and you'll find your own special place. And I guess the other thing um, is go to conferences. If
Yeah.
something happens, you know,
Yep.
it's my
Yeah.
two cents.
So Brett, I think I told you this before, but I used to go to conferences and all the big, guys and the big gals, big names were there, and you learn so much from them. And the last couple of conferences I was at, I looked around and I'm like, they're not a lot of them here anymore.
I know,
We're
I
the old guys now.
I
And
know. Yeah,
the thing that's really encouraging to me though is, I mean, we have so many bright people that are coming into the
yeah,
field, that are
yeah,
contributing to the field.
yep,
I'm really encouraged with where our field is heading. I think we've got a lot of very interesting, very smart people
yeah,
that are
yeah.
really looking to push the field forward. So
Couldn't agree more. I was just at this meeting. Sorry, there was this young kid, and he started talking to me, and he did biomedical engineering at Georgia Tech, fantastic engineering school, and now he's doing this. And he came up to me, and we started talking physics and all this. And I'm like, man, I want to watch this kid, and and
mm-hmm.
it's just jam packed with them, James. Bright
It's
kids.
yep, yeah. It's great to see. So
Yeah, fun.
all right. Well, Brett, thank you for spending the last hour and a half with me. Thanks for contributing and all that you do in the field, and thank you for sharing some of that with the community here. So I appreciate
As
having
this
you
was
on.
fun. This was
I,
fun.
I
A lot of fun.
I love doing this. I learned
Yeah,
so much from
yeah.
talking to people. Neuropod content is intended for personal use and general information purposes only. Neuropod cannot guarantee the accuracy of any statements made by guests or the sufficiency of the information. The opinions and views expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect or represent those of the hosts or producers. Such views are opinions of the guests and should not be used to inform appropriate patient care or for legal purposes. If you have specific medical concerns or questions, you should contact your healthcare provider. It is the listener's responsibility to confirm the accuracy of opinions and views before putting them into practice. Neuropod disclaims any and all liability for injury or other damages for all claims which may result from the use of the information presented.